Hi, guys. We're going to go ahead and jump into structure. This is one of the number one key things to any in-home. We're going to make sure we jump in and dive into the intro, your in-home keyword tracks to use. We're going to also jump into the close and the close keyword tracks for you to use. Any intro, you need to make sure that you have these key components. Now, this is going to give you the structure in your appointment. Now, again, your wording, you can make it you, right? You've got to be you, but it's very, very imperative that you have these key points in all of your in-home appointments, no matter what type of appointment you're there for. You want to make sure they know why you're there. You want to make sure they know who you are, what gives you the right to talk to them about this. You wanted them to know what you specialize in. You're not just there for the one thing that they requested. Who are you? What do you specialize in? What your role is? What is your role in this process? What's the process going to be? Then make sure that they qualify, that it's something that's affordable, that they understand, that you are here to submit a request. You're not the quote person. You're here to submit a request to get them approval. They're going to see a draft in about 24 to 48 hours. Their policy will come to them about 1 to 2 weeks, and you'll be there to go over it with them. Now, if they come back with a denial, no worries. You'll pivot to somebody else because you're a broker, remember? Now, again, once you go through all those steps, I say, can we continue? Is this something that I can go through with you? You want to get those key points, why, who, what you specialize in, what your role is, the process, making sure that they qualify, it's affordable, they understand. You're going to submit the request, they're going to draft, you'll pivot if needed to, and can you continue? Every single appointment, have that structure in the home. Use a credibility sheet to go with it that shows the carriers and what you do. Now let's get into some examples of in-home keyword tracks that you can use. What my job is. What my job is, Mary, is to make sure that I find something for you that's affordable and that you understand. What my job is to make sure that you're you and that no one's trying to take anything out in your name. What I specialize in. What I specialize in is mortgage protection, final expense insurance, traditional life insurance, and wealth preservation, retirement income planning, and tax-free retirement strategies, as well as Medicare. Now, I'm a broker. What that means for you is that I've got 15 different A-rated insurance companies that I go through. That way you don't have to call 12 different companies to make sure that you find the best coverage. My job is going to be to make sure to find the one that's going to give you a yes, and then most importantly, is affordable to you. Now, I'm going to make sure that this is most importantly affordable to you and your family. Because at the end of the day, the only type of insurance that makes sense is the one that's in place when you do die. I'm assuming that this is why you filled out this request. So whether that be, I see here that when you die or if you can't work, that all the income goes away in your family. I'm assuming that that's why you filled out this request. I know protecting your family is your number one priority. I know that you want to make sure that if something or when something happens to you, that your wife, Mary, and your son, Bob, they're taken care of. Perfect. I completely understand. This is what we're going to do. Perfect. I completely understand. Most people in your situation do this. Does that sound fair? Perfect. I completely understand. Diffuses any situation and eliminates any feeling of combativeness or defensiveness. Here's what the process is. What we're going to expect is this. The process is this. This is a process that happens and that you're the middle person in this, so you're not going to be able to change the process of what the expectation is for the carriers, right? Once you receive your policy, you can expect a draft. Back up, you actually would already have the draft. But once you receive your policy, can get a call from me. We can go ahead and go over that with you. Now, once we get an approval, I can come back, go over your policy with you, make sure we don't need to make any changes or any adjustments to your policy. Most people in your situation, they will do this. This is the hurting. This is everybody wants to be like everybody else. Most people in your situation do this. Here are your options. Your options are this. We'll go over your options. We don't say quotes. You're not the quote person at all. Here are your options. Mary, paint me a picture of what tomorrow looks like for your daughter if you didn't come home. What does that look like for you and your family? What happens? Mary, it's not when you die, or if you die, it's when you die. When you die, what is going to happen? Don't be afraid to say when you die. When you die, what is your wife going to do? Is she going to sell the house? When you die, who's going to pay for your funeral? Are you going to be a GoFundMe? Do you want to leave that type of legacy? What are you going to do? Again, these are key phrases that you can use to build emotion and get people to move, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to help families, is by building an emotional response to get people to move and to be able to show the value of what you're putting in place. Now let's go to the close, right? The close is very, very important. You've gone through, shown them the options, everything you've gone through. Now what? First, you're showing them options, right? Not quotes. I'm going to show you the options of what you're putting in place. Ask which option makes the most sense to them. Makes the most sense to you and your family? And most importantly, what do you feel will fit your needs and your budget? Reiterate the option that they chose, making sure to go over exactly what they said that they wanted. Explain what the process is again. What is going to be the process that they can expect when you're going to go ahead and submit this request? Open up the e-application. Once you open up the e-application, ask your client to grab their license, make sure they have their beneficiary information, a doctor contact information, and their routing account information. After you do this, it's very important that as they're walking away or after you ask those questions, ask them a diffusing question. Something about their house, their family, or maybe it's just asking for a glass of water, something that's going to diffuse them feeling like pressure and on the spot that you've asked them for their routing and account number and their license. Now, once you go through that process, the key things for any structure, you want to make sure you do not offer a later draft date. Dated out policies result in people forgetting about their policies. They will result in higher chargebacks, and they'll result in if something happens to your client and they weren't protected, that's on you. You want to make sure also that you leave behind some sort of policy summary, making sure they understand what they have, what the process is, what they can expect from you, and knowing how to get in contact with you after you leave. You want to make sure you explain to them what they can expect next. They're going to see their draft. Once they're in approval, they'll see their draft 24 to 48 hours. Their policy will come 1 to 2 weeks after that. You'll call them. You'll go over it with them. You want to make sure that they aren't ever guessing of what's going to happen. And whatever you tell them is going to happen, if you tell them you're going to call them, you want to make sure that that's what you do. You want to make sure whatever you tell them you're going to do, that you hold yourself to that responsibility and that expectation, so that way they know that they can trust you and that they're going to come to you for further needs or further questions. Now, what are the closed keyword tracks that we can use? If you were to qualify, which one of these would make the most sense for you? Out of these options, which makes the most sense to you and your family? What does it make sense for you guys? Most people in your situation do this. Most people in your situation want to make sure this happens. Here's what we're going to do. Perfect. Let's see if we can get you an approval. Again, you don't make the decisions. You're not the person with the approval. You're there to help them. If the carrier comes back and denies you, no worries. We're just going to pivot to a different carrier because, as I mentioned to you, I'm a broker. So we just need to find somebody that's going to help you and put the protection in place. Now, I know this was important to you. I know this is important to you, and I'm going to make sure that I help you. We will make sure you don't have to worry about this anymore. I'm going to make sure, because I know you've been thinking about this for a while, that you don't have to worry about this anymore. I'm going to be the one that's going to go over this and help your daughter when you do die. I'm going to be the one that she's going to call because I'm going to make sure that she doesn't have to go through the carriers, be dealing with the paperwork. That's where my job comes in. I hope it's not for a long time, but I'm going to be that person. Now, 10 years ago, Mary, this may have been a rash decision. Now it's not. This is the time that it makes sense now. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree with this statement? Can you see how that makes sense? Can you see how this protects your family? Can you see how this makes financial sense for you and your family? Once we get an approval, you're going to see a draft in 24 to 48 hours. The policy is going to come in 1 to 2 weeks, and I'll go over the policy with you to make sure that that we don't need to make any changes. We can make any adjustments if you'd like to increase the coverage, change the draft date after the policy gets issued. Our process right now is we need to get you an approval for your policy. Does that make sense? Does that sound fair? Again, those are key word tracks you can use in home to help with your close, to ease a transition with your clients. So that way they don't feel uncomfortable. They understand the process. They are knowing that you're there to help them. If you can use the structure of the intro, practice the key in-home word tracks, get confident with your close, understanding how to diffuse uncomfortable questions or situations and build the rapport and that credibility with your client, and make sure that you know key transition words for your close to help go from the option person to walking out with a policy approved for your client. You're going to be able to gain control of and structure by being there to help advocate for families and help your family as well. Again, this is structure, breaking it down. Implement these key points, and you guys will have a lot of success.